Hello and welcome to 251. Two pianists, 5 minutes, one subject. My name's Simon Whiteside.
My name's Nick Tomlin, and this week we're asking the rhetorical question, the best jazz club in the world? And we're talking about the Village Vanguard, which is the oldest operating jazz club in New York City. It was opened by Max Gordon on February the 22nd, 1935, although it actually opened a different venue in 1934 on Charles Street and Greenwich Avenue, but he couldn't actually get a license for that. So he moved to, it used to be a speakeasy called the Golden Triangle at 178 7th Avenue South, and renamed it the Village Vanguard. And during the 1930s and 40s, it was really a kind of bohemian hangout for artists, and it mainly put on poetry readings and folk music. But the important thing for us was that they put on jazz. Every Sunday afternoon they had a jazz jam session. And really, as modern jazz developed during the 1940s, artists and poets and sort of beatniks started to become more interested in modern jazz. And really following that trend, Gordon started featuring more jazz groups until in 1957 he really made the switch and started to put jazz on as the main attraction at the Vanguard.
Yes, and as you said, it was a sort of bohemian hangout for poets and thinkers, intellectuals, talking about politics, and there were posters on the wall of, figures from politics and culture. But what happened eventually was that the sort of folk those sessions were very important early on, but that disappeared slowly, and eventually it became an out-and-out jazz club. But also, Max Gordon, he started the Blue Angel in Midtown, which was a much more sort of like the Tropicana and other big clubs, where lots of people who were significant in social life, like film stars and writers, Norman Mailer, people like that, would go and be seen. And that was a much more expensive club with nightclub acts, with comedians and musicians and all sorts of things. So what he would often do is try people out at the Vanguard as a sort of proving ground, and then move them to the Blue Angel. People, for example, like Barbra Streisand, made that journey. But what makes it interesting as a jazz club for us, and why we know it as part of our sort of jazz history and our jazz understanding, is that there are significant recordings came from there. Probably the one that I first clocked was Bill Evans's recordings from there in the early 60s. But I think you said the Sonny Rollins Trio one was...
I think that was the first, A Night at the Village Vanguard, 1957, I think, was the first live recording, which has become an iconic album. It's a trio album with Sonny Rollins leading it. And,
it's got one of my favourite introductions on it. We're going to play a tune that you're all familiar with. Sunny Moon for two.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also Dexter Gordon hosted his homecoming gig when we mentioned it when he returned from Europe in '76. That's where he played, and there's a huge list of iconic recordings that were made at the Village Vanguard over the years.
And we shouldn't forget that Monday night was the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis band.
Yeah,
and they played there from a very long residency, 1966 to 1990, I think.
I think that's what it was, yeah.
Now, what we should also say is that Lorraine Gordon, who married Max, took out and was happy, a great jazz lover. But in fact, her first husband was none other than Alfred Lyon of Blue Note, and she was the sort of bookkeeper at Blue Note for a while. But there's a quote from her saying, "The biggest reasons my pals and I went to the Vanguard was because there were jazz jam sessions in the afternoons on Sundays. You could hear Lester Young, Ben Webster, all the greatest jazz musicians for 50 cents at the door," or something like that. And she took it on after Max died. He died in 1989. In fact, she died at 95 in 2018, and she ran it pretty much up to her last days. And she's a very interesting character. Her book, Alive at the Village Vanguard, is worth a read, and also Max Gordon's Live at the Village Vanguard. But that's it for today. From me, Simon Whiteside, goodbye.
And from me, Nick Tomlin, goodbye.